Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Analyzed Scripts. We are thrilled to bring you season 3, part 1 of The Bear today.
Yes.
We both furiously watched it. I think, we couldn't stop because it was just so good. So it
Mhm.
was not a problem at all getting this done. So today we're going to stick to some of the supporting but also excellent characters like Tina, Marcus, and then Sugar and Donna. So we will be covering the big Ice Chips episode.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa. But
Whoa.
yeah. So how are you
Right?
feeling?
Well, like now I'm good. But after I watched the whole season, I felt legit depressed.
Mhm.
I felt a lot of intense feelings. I watched the Ice Chips episode. This was probably not a good idea on July 4th as I was folding laundry in the morning. We're about to go to the beach with the kids, and I just like fell into a pit of despair.
Yeah.
Um, and I was irritable, the rest of the day, I'll have to
Mm.
say. It really affected me.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely
Um,
an episode to not watch before you have to go do something like super happy
Joyful.
and fun
Yeah.
and
Yeah, or, like, show up as a present parent, and then you have
yeah.
in your head, like, "Oh god, I don't wanna be like Donna," but now I'm, like, irritable, like, "Oh my god."
Mhm. Yeah.
But before we get into that, I also wanted to mention that the Emmy nominations just dropped yesterday, compared to the day we're recording this. And The Bear is, like, sweeping it with 23.
Sweeping.
I guess some other
Mhm.
show, Shogun, which I haven't seen, got
Me
a
neither.
couple more. But this is for last season, season 2, which was astounding, I have to say. I think that's still my favorite season,
Mm.
um, but especially the Fishes episode. And
Yeah.
literally, like, every single person got nominated. I started sharing, the announcements on Instagram yesterday in our stories, and, like, after, like, 10 of them, I was like, "Okay, basically everyone got nominated, like, I have to get back to work, like, I
Yeah.
can't keep sharing."
Literally.
I wanted to give everyone recognition,
I know.
but
I mean, it was
still
huge. Like,
huge.
also all the shows that we cover are like basically Emmy nominated. Like
Yeah,
the
so
morning show got a bunch.
yes. So basically we
Mhm.
have really good taste, and I think that means that, like, everyone really enjoys seeing these
Mm.
gritty portrayals about emotions on our screen. I think we
Yes.
all relate to it. It moves
Yep.
us, and, maybe it'll bring us together in the election season.
Perhaps.
I don't know.
I feel
S
like the bear, I'm and I don't know if we could go down this road, but even with just thinking about their like family dynamics, right? And like extended family, like cousins of cousins, people we call cousins or uncles who
Yes.
aren't really cousins or uncles. Like, I just think it's interesting too, thinking about them going through an election year, like
Oh,
just like conflicting views, or like it just would be
Portia,
probably very realistic.
that is a really fun content idea. Let's tag that, put it
Mm.
aside, and figure out how to do something with that on social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
It reminds me of what you did a couple years back. It's crazy we can say that now, but about, the characters from Succession showing up to
Mhm.
therapy.
Yeah.
I love
Exactly.
that. We
Yep.
could do the bear showing up to
Yeah.
therapy.
Ooh, that'd be a good one.
That's a good one. Okay, so we
Yeah.
gotta, like, brainstorm offline.
Okay.
But yeah, so we wanted to break this up into 2 episodes because there's so much to cover, and last year when we covered seasons 1 and 2, we felt like we were just, like, moving through really fast just to try to get to everyone and not make the episode, like, 100 hours long. So today, like Portia said, we're gonna focus on Tina, Marcus, Sugar, and Donna, and then next Monday, we'll drop our episode focusing on Carmy, Sydney, and Richie. And yeah, there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
I One thing I love about the show is that with each season, we learn a little
Mhm.
more, like, about the characters, and I was so excited to learn about Tina finally,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm dying to hear your reaction.
I think there was just so much there, like even pre learning any of her backstory with just like how she interacts with people. She's like,
Mhm.
like a middle-aged woman in this kitchen with like like mostly men, and prior to Sydney, all
Right, all
men,
men, right.
who kind of, besides a couple, are like significantly younger than her. Like, and I was just like, how
Mhm.
did she end up here? Like,
Right,
was she a chef forever? So I think
right.
that episode was so important. Um, and it kind of, it was funny because there was a couple episodes that like took away from like the
Story.
current story, but I
Yeah.
don't want to say they took away, they like diverted and then added to it. So the one thing I think a lot of people can probably relate to though is just going through a transition in your life, and for her it was the loss of her job and her identity and like her security,
For
and
sure.
then the struggle of being a middle-aged person who
Mhm.
cannot find a job in a city where it's like she's, it's all these young people taking the positions, her
Mhm.
trying so hard not to get like demoralized and frustrated
Oh,
and disappointed. I mean, the financial concerns, like it was just so moving. I definitely
yeah.
cried, and
Oh my
got
gosh,
teary-eyed a couple times
100%. When she's
during that
sitting in
episode.
there in the beef with the napkins thing, like, just get out of town. Like,
I know.
it's so moving, but you're so
Yes.
right. Like, until this season, in this episode, I think called Napkins, directed by Io, which is really
Mhm.
cool. Um, I hope I'm saying her name right.
Yeah.
I am? Okay. Um, but until then, like, that's kinda all we knew about her, and then we
Right.
saw her interacting with Sydney, another young, but this time woman though, like coming
Mhm.
in and kind of having a position of seniority. And doesn't that just have that is such a richer content now, knowing this part
Yes.
of her story and like how she got into this kitchen. And yeah, I mean, gosh, it was just so moving. Like when she was trying to get the job and she was so close to getting one, and then they were like, "Oh, you don't have a bachelor's?"
I know, because
Yeah,
then she
we
was like, "But this is the job I did for 20 years," and I think
literally,
that, that, like, happens a lot, and I think this huge push, and I mean, we could talk for hours about just, like, the higher education system, but,
yeah,
like, that doesn't make sense, right? Like, how can you not hire
right.
someone who's literally done this job forever just because they don't have a bachelor's degree? It's like, it's just such a limiting and inappropriate and like, what would I say? Like, point of
Right. I
privilege-y,
was also
like,
gonna say like probably racist, like, if you really
mm.
wanna get down to
Oh,
it,
yeah.
right?
Yep. Like
Like,
these
again, this
institutions blocking.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Um, exactly, discriminating against
Mhm.
people from, different walks of life who maybe couldn't go on that path or afford that path or just
Yep.
wasn't open to them. Yeah, that was just hard to see, and I feel like, I don't know, maybe because of how old we are and the types of patients we see, I feel like often I'm talking more to young adults who are
Mhm.
struggling to find a job, which again, that has like its own challenges. Like,
Yep.
right? Like you go and get this expensive bachelor's degree and then you can't actually find a job. And then like, what do you
Mhm.
do with it?
Right.
But like, I feel like at least in the media content I've been consuming, I haven't really seen as much about, the middle-aged folks who do lose their
Right.
jobs for reasons like this or for other kind of like sketchy reasons. I feel like
Mhm.
at some point companies find a way to restructure,
Yep.
quote unquote, and then like, the people who are making more money or who will get a pension down the road or things like that somehow get let go,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. It's like, trying to hire cheaper, and like, and then being okay with the high turnover. It's like, okay, yeah, this position, we do people for 3 years, and then, we don't want to be paying them 60 grand when we could really be paying them like 35,
Right,
for a
right.
couple of years. And it's just, yeah,
Ugh,
you felt in the acting with this, I think they're so good. I mean, and I know there's other
100%.
shows too and movies. Yeah. 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 Good actor like can portray things, but the emotionality that
Ugh,
these actors can make you, the viewer, feel is exactly like why we're covering the show. So like
100%.
you felt embarrassed, you felt
Yep.
her shame, you felt her like perceived
Anger.
judgment, her anger, all throughout that whole episode. And that's what was so moving, like
Right.
you were in it with her. And then finally, when she kind of like lets
Breaks
the front desk
down.
have it and is like,
Yes.
you know,
You're like, "Good for
whatever she
her."
said. Yeah, it's like, yeah, of course you did that. And then to that office person who also could have been, could you have been less like attentive or interested or helpful? Like you could have been polite and made eye contact and been
I
like, "Oh, I'm so
know. Giving
sorry."
her
Like,
the time of day.
right, we filled it. So like that, they should be doing that. But also like then that person I'm sure is walking away like, eye rolling, oh, this like, crazy middle-aged
This
woman coming in like
hysterical woman.
exactly. So
Yeah.
then it's just perpetuating that when it's like, no, you were rude and
Right.
dismissive. And like that's what
Right.
she's been feeling and carrying around for however long she was unemployed. But
Right. A long time, it seems like. I
mhm.
loved seeing her relationship with her husband.
Yeah.
I really love that for her,
Mhm.
that she has such a supportive partner. I love
Yep.
seeing her as a mother. And I just also was like so impressed by her, like, what is the word? Like gumption
Mhm.
or resilience, perseverance that she just kept going.
Right.
I think it also just shows that, like, you know, even when she's starting to try to go find work and she has her printed resume and everyone's like, oh,
Mhm.
we do this online now. And then it's like, oh my God, how do I figure out how to do this online now?
Right.
And like, there's so many hoops to jump through.
I also just feel like everyone, and including, the receptionist, like everyone just could be a little nicer. Like when she's
In
in
the
that
world.
clothing store and the guy just continues to be like, "Yeah, we're not hiring, but can I help you? Like look
Yeah.
for something." It's like,
So
just take the
rude.
resume. Just
Right.
take it. "Hey, we're
Give
not
us your
hiring
name,
right now. We'll put
but we're
this
going to
on
put it
file."
aside. Yeah.
Like it's not that hard to do.
I know. And I feel like in the world, we could all just be a little nicer in general. Like as you
Yes.
interact with people to and fro, here and
Mhm.
there, coming and going, like just be a little nicer.
Right.
It's my
'Cause,
hot
like,
tip.
that
Life
is
is
the
hard.
reality. Life is hard, and, having a little compassion and, like, a smile or, like, being assisted is
It
just,
goes a long way.
does give so long of a way. If that person had just been like, "I'm so sorry, like, that you didn't get notified," like, "I hear you. I can totally pass this information on. Your information is still in the system." Like, just giving somebody a little bit of validation and seeing
A little
people, and I
hope.
think, working I mostly see kind of like 30 and down, but I have, a handful of older clients, and a lot of what happens, and I see a lot of women, so I can't really speak to a lot of men, but there's this thing that happens kind of in middle age where it's like you start to not feel seen anymore.
Oh, good. I
And
can't wait
kind
for
of
that.
like, yeah, passed over. And I think that all hits you at the same time a lot of other things are happening,
Like
but
menopause.
yeah.
Stay
So
tuned.
I just think for her too, it's like she's this middle-aged woman who like is feeling like I'm kind of useless. I'm not needed. I'm not.
And also, like, I think there's something there too with like her son getting older.
Mm,
Right, so then you're, like,
right.
not as needed. You still are in all these important ways, but
Yes.
it's like the hands-on
Right.
mothering. You're
Right.
preparing them to leave the nest, and
Mhm.
now you lose your job. Like, I feel like middle age can be a time if you're, you know, in the right place in your career, and if you have luck and good
Right.
timing where you could really, like, lean in again and flourish
Mhm.
in a bigger way. But again, it could also be a time where, like, you're let go and passed over, and, like, now what?
Right.
What do you do
Yeah.
now? And you're having hot flashes? Portia, I'm preparing, for my course that I'm launching, Reaper's
Mhm.
Life Academy, visit my website. Um, and I'm like, I was reading that hot flashes can last for 10 years.
It's a long time.
That's a long time.
And they can
And
start early. Like,
mhm, Tina
is it
Tina yeah,
perimenopause?
perimenopause. Tina definitely was having hot flashes
Mhm.
during this whole episode.
Right.
Do you think that helps? No.
No.
No. No one's, like, saying even, "Here, you want some water?"
No. And,
Like, come
like,
on.
how amazing was it? And again, it was another point of me being teary-eyed watching, was
Richie.
when she goes into the beef, yeah, and gets like, "Oh, yeah, you want a coffee? Like, just take it." And then all of a sudden, "Oh, here's a sandwich." Like, "Oh, yeah, we
Oh,
made an extra and like, take it, no problem." And it's just like that little act of kindness, I think is what also
UFO.
allows her to kind of break down.
Yeah.
And like it's private kind of, like she goes around the side and then
Yes.
she's just kind of crying, and I think it's like just that act that kind of allowed her to pause, instead of just like
Yeah.
another mean person, and then she's like,
Right.
ramped up and maybe angry tears, but like that was so moving. And I
It
I
was so
love
mhm.
um
I know what you're gonna
the
say.
Fac,
Yes.
and his
His other
sidekick.
brother or cousin or friend.
Yeah.
I have no idea how all these people are
Who just
related.
like can't tolerate this woman crying. They're like, "You gotta stop it. Like, what do
They're
we do?
so
Like, you gotta
funny.
talk to her, Mike. You gotta talk to her."
And then Richie's the one who's like, "Oh god, I don't know." Like, but this is where
Yeah.
we see Richie's humanity, right? And we'll get into Richie more next time, but like I do really love him still.
Mhm.
And then we see, gosh, why is his name escaping me? The brother,
Mikey.
Mike, Mikey, going up to her and
Yeah.
like the conversation they had. Oh my gosh, beautiful.
Beautiful. Just like giving her the time and seeing her and validating her and making her giggle and laugh, and like
Yeah,
just all of that was so healing. And then, it's like you're kind of waiting for like, okay, like when is he gonna ask her to work there? Because she works
right.
there,
Waiting on
and
for that.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
you could see her cooking at home, like, throughout the
Right.
time, getting
Right.
creative with, like, low cost meals, and it was just it was just really beautiful.
And I loved how with Mikey and Tina, that conversation, it felt very, like, obviously vulnerable because he sees her crying. So he's trying to
Mhm.
figure out, how do I go up to her? And he's like, okay, I'm gonna like restock the napkin dispenser, you know? They could just ignored her, like everyone
Right.
else had been doing, you know. But he goes up and he sort of checks on her to see if she's okay. But I feel like like in a in a safe way, you
Yeah.
know, like, and they just sort of get to talking and about each other and their different frustrations, and they're just like connecting, but
Mhm.
in a way that feels like, I want to say superficial, but that's not exactly what I mean. Do you know what I mean? Like kind of
Yeah.
um like a safe distance, I guess.
Mhm.
You know, like
Right.
checking on some, and that can be really awkward, like for anyone, but especially if it's a total stranger, like you can
Mhm.
feel really awkward and it's like, well, how do I like gauge if they're okay? Do I even want to
Right.
engage? Like, what do I say? But it led to like such a beautiful moment between them.
Mhm.
And then again, I think that speaks to Mikey's character,
Right.
right? And it's like as these seasons go on, I see more and more why everyone is just so overtaken by their grief, you
Mhm.
know, for having lost Mikey. And I
Right.
think I love to see how, you know, this show really emphasizes that you can have such a beautiful soul and a beautiful character and struggle,
Mhm.
like, and have, you know, mental health issues or addiction issues or, you know, personality
Conflict.
conflicts. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But you can still be like a good person at your core.
Mhm.
I think that's like something they get really right.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, and it says to be continued, so we know we're getting, another season of The Bear, but, like, I think, you kind of meet them without Mikey, and we get snippets of it here and there, of course, in
Yeah.
the Seven Fishes episode where we see
Oh,
him, I'm assuming in the throes of kind of, like, his addiction, but we we didn't get to see why it was so hard when like Carmi, when Sydney kind of comes into the bear, they're changing it. Tina is like not
yeah.
calling, she has a really hard time with Carmi coming
Yeah.
in at first, and then with Sydney kind of teaching her. And then we see along the way, like once you get to know people, which is again so true in the real world, like that becomes okay. We can trust people, we can lean in, we can like know that they're not taking over, ruining something. So like I think we got to see kind of Tina's involvement with that and how
Yeah.
hard it must have been for to go from the beef to the bear.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. But again, now when you think of her whole arc so far, like it's just so beautiful that you know, that they like gave her a job, and then that, you know, Carmi and Sydney come in. Totally understand why she feels kind of threatened by them. I still
Mhm.
feel like there's a nice like maternal vibe coming off Tina, like even with
Yeah.
Sydney, as you know, they're colleagues and their peers, but I think they do have that, and I love that
Sure.
also for Sydney since she had lost her mom. Um, but then, like, when Carmi believes in her, like, you have all these people who believe in her and invest
Mhm.
in her, you know, like teach her these skills and continue honing that craft and help her. And it's just like really, I think, beautiful. And I
Mhm.
loved seeing that. And
Yeah.
I really loved it. So
Mhm.
bravo. Bravo,
Yeah.
everyone.
Bravo
Congrats
to
on your
that.
Emmy nom.
Yeah. And like your directorial debut,
Oh,
Io is
all of them.
amazing.
So
So,
good.
um, I feel like I liked how at the end too, Tina and Marcus interact. So like they're all there on their day off because they're trying to like
Mm,
work stuff out.
yeah.
And same, Marcus is very, I feel like just know like is a good communicator in the way that like he knew how to help Tina with that dish at the end without
Mhm.
being like, this is wrong or it's not good. Same with Carmi and her or
Yeah.
Sydney with like showing her how to kind of drizzle it over.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was just so nice when they were just having the moment. She's like checking in, he's like, oh, like it's okay. Obviously, we're talking about him now dealing with grief.
Yeah.
And it was just like such a beautiful moment that was so necessary because I think it just humanizes everyone in the bear over and over and over again. But like we didn't need to see them doing that, but it was like it
That's
okay,
why I
it could
love
have
the
been
show,
focused.
though. Like,
Right.
this show is about emotions. Like, that is
Yeah.
what the show's about.
Mhm.
It really is. It's about
Right.
the human experience and emotions and grief. Like, that is
Mhm.
also what the show's about, you
Right.
know? And in season 3, we really get to see Marcus, who I love. Like, I just want the
Mhm.
best for Marcus. I just love him. And again, congrats, Lionel Boyce, on your Emmy nom. Totally well deserved. But in season 3, we really see him navigating the grief of losing his mom and not having
Mhm.
been there. Remember, season 2 ended with him getting the phone call, but they were like
Yeah,
on their, opening night or whatever.
right.
Gosh, what did you think about Marcus? I guess like I still really want him and Sydney to get together.
I
I don't
know.
think it's gonna happen, but
Yeah.
like I wish it would.
Yeah. I just love his arc from, working at the beef, kind of slinging some sandwiches to now being this like incredible artistic pastry chef and like
Oh,
receiving inspiration from flowers, receiving it from his
yeah.
grief, and just
Yeah.
like using his work in what feels like a healthy way to kind of
Yes.
process what's going on. It doesn't feel like avoidant or like that he's not really thinking about it. It's like, we have to work, but it
Mhm.
feels like he can do that in a way that like honors her.
Mhm. Mhm.
Having Sydney come over when she was helping him like move all of her stuff, like he's like, what do I do with this? Like it was just so,
Yeah.
again, human. Like we all
Yeah.
do that. It's so
Yeah.
hard.
Right, exactly. And so beautiful again that they keep checking on him. Like I
Mhm.
think grief and loss is one of those things that like most people feel awkward talking about or like don't
Yeah.
know, should you check on someone, should you not? Like what do you say when you do?
Mhm.
And it was so nice to see a lot of the different characters like check on him and then give him his space. And I feel like they
Right.
were able to really like read his cues really well. And he was able to communicate really well. He was able to
Mhm.
say like directly, like, guys, I don't really want to talk about it. And I was like, all right,
Right.
we're gonna, and then the facts like make some joke or something,
Yeah.
like in the mood. But then like he knows he can call Sydney, even though they had that sort of awkwardness at the end, which I love. I love that they can
Mhm.
move through it and still be close. Like I love that. I would love for them to get married, but we'll see. And yeah, with Tina checking on again that like maternal sort of vibe. She's like the mother
Mhm.
hen maybe of the kitchen.
Yeah.
I love it. But
She's
I just
wearing
love
a lot of hats,
yeah,
like I just
as
and
all
I
women
guess
do.
everyone I was going to say it's like Sydney is like, and even just thinking about how she interacts with Marcus, how she interacts with
Mhm.
Tina, how she, will get to even dropping the food off for Sugar
Mhm.
and her husband. It's
Yeah.
like, just holding kind of everything together
Yeah.
in a really stressful environment. But yeah, I loved that they were all kind of like partying at the end.
Yeah.
And Marcus was there, and they made those like waffles with
Oh,
the
I loved that.
caviar and
Yes, I loved that was
dancing
so great.
around.
I loved in Sydney's new place, and I love
Mhm.
too, like, as we're talking about it, I'm realizing, like, the conversations between the crew at the Bear or at the Beef, right? Between Marcus and Tina, between Marcus and Sydney, even between the Fact brothers, as silly and ridiculous as they are, and with John Cena, like, haunting that
Yeah.
restaurant. I love how this show just introduces, like, just enough comedy to,
Mhm.
like, lighten the mood a little bit. It's a great
Yes.
defense mechanism. Humor is, but, I love how, like, those are great examples of healthy communication, and even, like, when you get into conflict or awkwardness, like, you can work through it.
Mhm.
It's such a nice juxtaposition to all the abusive, toxic communication we saw Carmy going through in the prior kitchens with Joel McHale, who,
Right.
like, I don't know his character's name, but I always just see him as Joel McHale. And we'll talk more about our episode next time where we sadly see Carmy starting to display some of those behaviors.
Mhm.
And I think that is what starts to wedge this like doubt in Sydney's mind. But it's a nice example of seeing some healthy communication styles
Yeah.
in the midst of immense grief and
Right.
stress and anxiety and things like that.
And I wonder if the others feel it, like it was kind of focused on Sydney. I
Mhm.
think I like seeing Carmi shift and being like,
Mhm.
I have this other opportunity, but like Marcus, like did he
Right.
because they all came in that next day, to like work some stuff out and it was like
Which, yeah,
because it was
speaks
the
to
night
their
before
like
was so
dedication
bad. Right.
or maybe
Yeah, like how are they feeling about Carmi? Like
yeah.
Tina being more maternal, having a child, like does she have more empathy? Does she have more tolerance for it? Like, long term, I would be curious to see like who does Carmi
Sticks
drive
around.
away like
Yeah.
first.
Right.
Because he's
Yeah, because
also
I
given them so many opportunities though, so I
Mhm.
think that's a hard like power dynamic
Yes.
where like Marcus got to go to Stockholm and like learn to be a pastry chef. the ex football players, now
Right.
sommelier. Like, so
Mhm.
it's like all these people are being kind of taken care of, but do they now feel indebted? Would they
Right.
leave if it was negative? I
The
don't
way you
know.
describe it like that, like, sounds an awful lot like domestic v abuse in some ways, like,
Mm.
but sometimes there can be some, like, good elements to the relationship and
Mhm.
then really toxic ones, right? And I think, like, in whatever your relationship when there's good and bad, and by bad, I mean, like, abuse bad, like, really, really bad, but when there are other times where the person behaves well, like, it gets really confusing, I think,
Right.
hard to walk away. It's,
Mhm.
like, easier not easier, I'm never gonna say it's ever easy, but if someone is, like, 100% bad, like a serial killer, then you're like, "Okay, you're bad." But even then, usually they're not 100% bad. Usually
Right.
there's some charming elements, there's some
Mhm.
redeeming qualities. They've done something that sorta keeps you hooked.
Sure.
Kinda like Donna, if we wanna segue into her.
Sure.
Oh, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, obviously deserves her Emmy nom. Oh my god. I was so happy to see her again,
Yeah.
season 3. But, like, we see how she can be bubbly and gregarious and, funny and charming and really draw people in. And then we've also seen how, like, wretched and
Mhm.
cruel and dangerous and abusive she can be. She's a great,
Mhm.
great example of that.
Yeah. I felt so much empathy for Sugar
Oh,
in just like your husband's away.
where
You're
was
like,
he? I wasn't sure where he was.
I think away for work.
So he's, like, trying to get back or something?
Yeah, like on a it seemed like it was like, a
He's on a
short
ship?
trip. She
Oh,
probably I'm guessing that, she's probably maybe like 4 weeks or 3 weeks till due. Cause I feel like if you're like 2 weeks due, like your partner, like probably shouldn't be going on a business trip, but like maybe it was just enough. So it felt like, oh, like you're like a month out, like I can go
right,
on
you
this
think
one
you
last
have
trip.
time.
And then
I
like
think so because
she,
he was like, "I'll go
ooh,
get all those heavy things at the
I know.
store." But I get that when you're, like, that pregnant and you're just so, like, uncomfortable and you
Mhm.
do wanna just be like, "I can still do everything," even though
Right.
you feel awful.
Right.
Or maybe she just needed some peace and quiet, like, by
Mhm.
herself with everything going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Oh, so Sugar played by Abby Elliott, I loved and Natalie, like, is her real name, as her character, but I just loved really getting to know more of her
Mhm.
backstory, and I loved and found it really hard to watch the dynamic between her and her mom.
Mhm.
So I just wanna give a shout out to the executive producer and writer of the episode called Ice Chips, Joanna Kahlo, because, like, wow, 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 did she get this very intricate,
Mm.
difficult mother-daughter dynamic exactly right. In
Yeah.
my personal and professional opinion, exactly right. And
Mhm.
then, like, I feel like you can only do that if you have lived experience. Like, how do you get it exactly
I
right?
know. I know. I think it couldn't have been done
Any
more
better.
realistically. Like it was just spot on with with like the inner conflict so visibly well done in, Natalie's Sugar's mind of like I need someone to support me. I want my mom to be that person. I wish she could. She's not. Like the back and
Right.
forth with like, and then a contraction comes and like her mom is like helpful in those like very
Ish. Yeah.
specific moments where I feel like it's so obvious that like that Natalie that it can't be about Donna, but yeah, I think in Donna's head it still is because she's like, wow, I'm such a great mom. Like she started
Mhm.
doing the he thing. Oh, and it's working. Like I told her, like I'm so great. Like oh, she's gonna do the epidural now. Like, and I think that that's the playing. It's like I don't. Donna is, as we know, as therapists, like not all bad, and I think yearns to be a good mom, but like cannot because of her inner
Her own stuff.
wounds. And it's
Yeah.
just that even conflict about like making everything about her, telling her story to the nurse and,
Mhm.
telling Natalie that, dismissing her birth plan. But then,
Mhm.
oh, no, no, no. Well, you do what you want to do. Like it's perfect. Like, I think,
It's
we could just
perfect.
go through every scene and,
Every
like,
single scene. I mean, again, so last in our, I think in our season 2 recap, we suggested or we diagnosed Donna with having borderline personality
mhm.
disorder with narcissistic flair. Again, all in the cluster B realm. And again, I feel like we see it so perfectly here.
Yes.
Just how like, and I just, it killed me when we see Natalie stuck in traffic, having contractions, like trying to call everyone. I love that she's trying to use her like car system and they're not getting it right. Like, just keep calling the wrong person. No one's answering. So, in a moment of sheer intense desperation, she calls her mom, right?
Mhm.
Like, her mom was not the first call for obvious, clear reasons why. But, like you said, she needs someone. And even that, I think, like, speaks to the pain of a relationship like this,
Right.
that you want it to be the mom you wish you had, and then how much it sucks and
Mhm.
hurts when
Right.
you have to have the mom you really have, if you have a mom like this,
Mhm.
or a mom with some other limitations.
Right.
Donna also really struggles with addiction, we saw in the past, but, um and then we see Natalie, like, gets herself to the hospital. Again, I can totally see how Natalie Sugar, the daughter of a mother like this, would still be so independent to get herself to the hospital and,
Mhm.
like, not call the ambulance, like, not even know that you can rely on these other people for help, like, to
Right.
get you there. Like, she drives herself in traffic, right? Like, I don't know, that
Mhm.
really stuck out to me. And then when she gets there, Donna's like, just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, so it's hysterical," starting to do the hee hee hoo hoo, like the
When they're
Lamaze breathe
walking.
immediately. And Natalie's trying to tell her, like, "Mom, please, for this one time in my whole life, can
Yeah.
you please just be what I need you to be?" And we see Donna try. Like, she's trying and she just can't. And then I think the part that, like, broke my heart the most is that we just see Natalie, out of desperation, like, change her own wants and needs
Mhm.
to match Donna's so that she, Natalie, can get what she needs from someone.
Right.
And I think that is the crux of these relationships,
Right.
right?
I mean,
Right?
and those little moments, it's like you can Natalie's kind of second guessing herself with being
Yes.
like, "Well, like," and she's kind of like looking to her mom, like, as she's like changing her mind, and then getting the positive and validation back from her mom about
Right.
being like, now mom is saying like, "No, you do what you want to do," but it's because it's now Donna's plan, like what Donna wanted or recommended.
Exactly.
It's just
Right.
like even in those tiny little micro glances and gestures, again, kudos, couldn't have gotten it spot on. I
Oh
think,
my gosh.
Donna's like fluffing the sheets, telling the birth stories, which were like, besides
Traumatic?
Sugar's, like traumatic. So I was like,
Yeah.
I also
Like,
was
you're like,
wondering,
scare her.
did she call Pete or not? I was very
I kept
proud that she
wondering that too.
did. Yeah, I felt like that would have been such a non surprising, like,
Mhm.
like total F up for Donna, but
But I
like you
could
could
see
see
it
the
happen.
why of like,
Yep.
I can be here, I can
We
do
don't
this,
need
I can
him.
support her, we don't need him, and how
So I'm gonna tell
devastating
her
that
I
would have
called
been.
but didn't. Yeah, I
Exactly.
really didn't think she did. I really
Yeah.
didn't think she did.
So when he showed up, I was like, oh, thank
Oh
you. And
my
then
god.
Donna being so, again, like perceiving the rejection,
Yes.
of like, I'm not needed
Needed
anymore.
anymore. I thought she was gonna totally leave. So I was actually happy when she was in the waiting room. I felt
Yes.
like that was an appropriate distance to go, that
Hmm.
she could give Sugar the time with her husband, that the Fact brothers were there. But again, it's
Yeah.
like they come and they like, take care of Donna,
Hmm.
even in that situation,
Right.
and I think it just speaks to Donna and how she's so fragile
Hmm.
and yet like lovable. Like people
Right.
do, like she does have
Hmm.
that charisma, that energy, like
Yeah.
she can really hook you and then she can really destroy you. It depends
I
on what's going
know.
on. But you see how like even the Fact brothers come and they're making sure she's okay.
Mhm.
And again, I think like someone like Donna becoming a grandma can be like talk about like with Tina and middle age and stuff. I think like I mean, maybe with anyone becoming older is hard, but I think someone like her, it does like shake your sense of self, which for Donna is
Right.
already very fragile.
Yeah.
And it's like they're almost like using their humorous way to check in and see like, are you
Mm.
okay now being like the old lady or, you know,
Yeah.
I did think it was remarkable that Sugar and Donna could have some really like intimate
Mm.
conversations, you know,
Yeah,
that
they
Sugar was
were
able to tell her like why she sort of
yeah,
stays away.
some really direct, like, language. I think, "Mom, you scared all of us," and then I felt like
Oh,
this was probably one of the more moving parts of the episode for me when, Sugar was saying, "I feel alone, I feel ugly, I feel
yes.
in trouble, I feel sick when others are sick." Like, "I've taken so much of your stuff on."
Mhm,
Um, I became sick so that you could be better. Like, it was like everything that we, like, in therapy
mhm.
process with our clients who
Yeah.
have relationships like this. And to say that, I mean, it was like maybe something about the birth, like it was just something about that moment that Sugar felt like she could. It may be wanting to dispel it because I'm about to be a mom. I want to get this out. Like, I want to start over. Her worries about being a bad mom, and
Mhm.
Donna being reassuring, you're not, you're beautiful, you're the best. Like, that was
Mm.
sweet. It was just,
I think in real life, I don't think Donna would have been
mm,
able to handle that,
no, I don't
right?
think so.
So again, as beautiful as this is, I do feel like it's a fantasy. I think that's what made me depressed
Mm,
after watching the episode is I think like anyone who's experienced a relationship like this wishes you could have that
yeah.
conversation and the person would get it and things would change. That's like the
Hmm.
ultimate healing fantasy, especially when it's a parent. I don't think it's possible when someone has such severe personality pathology as we've seen Donna have. Like I think she would have flipped out. Like in real life. I don't think she would have tolerated it.
Yeah. I wonder too what she said at the beginning, when they were in the room together. She was like, Natalie to her mom, like, "You're working on, like, are you, I wanted you here, but not all the things that you bring."
Yes.
And
Yes.
Donna was like, "I'm working on it." I was like, I wonder what that means."
And
And even
are
just saying
you? Oh,
that
yeah.
alone before all of the other stuff, like, I was like, wow, like, the fact that she could hear that, I think that's, like, as far as I could see it realistically going, because again, it's like some complimentary, like, maybe Don, like, a person could have, like, dismissed kind of the end part or been
But
able
I
to,
think
like, separate.
but I think for Donna, having like legit, very classic borderline personality disorder,
Mm,
I don't think she can do that. I don't think she can hold on to that her daughter wants her, but not the stuff she
mhm.
brings. I think she would hear that as rejection, right? Because she sees things very black and
Yeah.
white, very split off. I don't think in real, the real
Mm,
world, Donna could have tolerated it. I think
yeah.
it's beautiful way of exploring it in this episode, and I think it was so beautifully done. Just, I think pointing out, like, what happens in the real world, I don't see
Yeah.
that. I don't
'Cause
see
it's
that
also such a
happening.
time of stress for everyone,
Yeah,
so, like, the
yeah,
fact even that Natalie, like, Natalie could have said everything in the most therapeutic, which she's not a therapist, that's not her job. She could
and
have said
she's
it
in
all
labor.
right, and, like,
Like,
that still wouldn't have landed in the real world
she could
well.
be walking on
Right,
eggshells, and it still wouldn't land.
right.
Yeah,
So, like,
yeah,
some of the things I was like, and again, that's why I was like, she definitely did not invite Pete. That's why, again, I was like, she definitely is leaving now because she feels so hurt and cannot
mhm.
tolerate, being not needed so directly
Right, and she
anymore.
even said that. I was actually,
Mhm.
like, really glad they included this line where Nat or, Donna said, as she's talking to the nurse, and again, this always happens, is, like, a person like this will really chat up sort of like a side
Yeah.
person, the waiter, the nurse, like, not the person they're there to support,
Yeah.
like, they nee it's like a show. They need,
Yep.
like, applause and attention, but she was telling this whole story, and Donna said, "I wanted a baby to love me."
Mm.
And I think, like, that's why Donna had kids, was to
Yeah.
feel that, you know, unconditional love, and I see this in practice that, that isn't what happens when you have a baby. They don't that's not what happens. That's
Right.
like, they're gonna cry at you, like, immediately, and I think that is why people with personality traits like this can struggle with all relationships, but especially if you, like, have a baby because you think that's finally going to be the ideal
Mhm.
relationship where you are the center of their world and totally loved, and that's it. Gosh, what a disappointment when the baby gets here and they actually have wants and needs and feelings, and part of a normal, parent-child relationship is them rejecting you
Right.
or, resisting you or going against you or not liking you. That doesn't feel good, and
Right.
people with these personality traits really really struggle with that,
Mhm.
and I think that's where sort of like the generational issues can bleed down.
Right. Like, Natalie referenced back to being always like, I'm always asking everyone if they're okay. I'm always asking
Oh
if
my
they still
god.
like me. I always feel like they don't. And we saw that in the Seven Fishes, which kind of escalated the blow up. And then even thinking about
Yeah.
just like gender influences,
Yes.
how did Mikey and Carmi meet or not meet their mom's needs different from Natalie? Like kind of that
Right.
resistance of being like two girls, two women.
And the
Um,
younger one, a pretty one,
right.
again, there's like this competitiveness that's gonna
Mm-hmm.
come from that mother-daughter relationship that isn't gonna be there with her sons.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just bravo, bravo. Like, I love too when Natalie was in the car and she has her tape or CD or maybe podcast playing, the adult children of alcoholics, and she just like names that, enabler, hero, scapegoat, mascot,
Mm-hmm.
lost child. Like she's listened to this so many times, and it's like, sadly, yes, those are the roles that children, in families affected by
Mm-hmm.
substance abuse and in families affected by personality disorders play.
Right.
And when you have a parent who has significant, borderline or narcissistic traits, I think sadly, like their kids are seen as like objects or chess pieces, like we talked
Mhm.
about in Succession, where they just serve a purpose
Right.
and their own individuality and humanity get lost. And I feel like we're seeing all, Natalie, Carmi, Mikey trying to navigate that,
Mhm.
because as a child, you still love your mom,
Yeah.
right? Like you still love them. There's still
Mhm.
that connection, but it really hurts. And it's a really tricky line to figure
Yeah.
out how to walk. And like, wow, this episode explored it in a beautiful,
Mhm.
heartbreaking, intense way.
Yeah. And my like wishes for Natalie is that, she feels super supported by her partner, which it seems like she does.
Seems like, yeah, it was so
Um,
cute when he was like, "Can I heat up the food?"
yeah.
When Sydney dropped it off and she's like, "Oh, I think like the smells might wake them up." He's like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay."
Yeah. That was super sweet. He just seems like a good dad. Like, I don't know, you just get like a good
Yeah,
feeling about him. And, you
yeah,
know, like, and Mikey's gone. And then, Carmi is in other ways gone.
right.
And has a hard time through his trauma being able to support
Everything.
her and be an uncle. And like, I just, it's always a trickle down, and I think unless you're
Yeah,
working on it, which it seems like she is, having that
yeah,
kind of like play and doing the therapy and also
yeah,
putting up the boundary for so long with her mom, like
right.
that
Yeah,
says she's doing work.
and then at the end when she texts the mom a picture of the baby, I'm just
Mm,
like, I feel like I wanna think that's great, but I'm, like, really nervous for
mm-hmm.
her. I don't like, I hope in the next season we see how does she navigate the boundaries
Yeah.
now, because sometimes with people like this, when you open up the door, like, the water floods in,
Hmm.
and it's really hard.
And then
It's
on
really
the flip
tricky.
side, it's like Donna experiencing, if we're seeing Donna therapeutically, like it's kind of like it just plays into her perception of events because now it's like over and over again rejection. So like,
Mm.
she asked
Mhm.
me to be there. I showed up for her. I was, supportive.
Mhm.
And then, and then I didn't get to come over after. I'm making this part up. Or
Yeah.
now she won't let me see the baby. And it's like
Mhm.
that belief system or the push and pull that's like, Donna's perception of the events, Natalie's perception of the events, and then the real events, that just
Mhm.
like kind of would play out in the therapeutic room. And I think that's
Yeah.
why people specialize in personality disorders so that you can, kind of lean in, challenge it, and pick up on what's going on and being
Mhm.
curious. Like,
Mhm.
well, tell me more like how it was in the room with Natalie. Like, oh, what are some things that she expressed to you? Like, and Donna might say nothing. That's all very
Right.
possible. So I think that's just interesting to think about kind of both parties in
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, I think, like, at least in the way they depicted Donna here, she has some capacity to learn how to
Mhm.
mentalize, which is a fancy word for saying, helping someone with a personality disorder like this learn how to put themselves in the other person's shoes and try to see from the other person's perspective. That's really hard for people with these traits. It seems like at times she can do it. And again, it's like, I don't know how realistic that is in the real world with someone with
Mhm.
this severe of pathology that we're seeing. Um, it, I always have hope,
Mhm.
but I think it would take a lot of time and like really good treatment.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking like DBT, but also like family kind of DBT,
Mhm.
and family therapy to really navigate that together. I wonder if I would love to see that for next season.
Yeah.
Family therapy with Donna, Carmi, and
Mhm.
Sugar.
That would be a tough job to be in.
Ooh. So as we wrap up, I just wanted to plug a book that recently came out called "It's Not You" by Dr. Ramani Durvasula. It's a great book about
Mm.
identifying and healing from people with narcissistic traits and behaviors. And I thought about it a lot as I was watching this episode. So if you're someone who, has someone in your life like this and it's really challenging, of course it is. It is very
Yeah.
challenging. And I think having books and stuff like this to really break it down for you, break down their behaviors. She gives some really good examples that you can be like, oh my God, my so and so does the same thing.
Mhm.
And she has some really good tips. I really enjoyed that. And then I also wanted to say that in this season, they mentioned that July 4th and St. Patrick's Day are like the worst in the restaurant. Did they say, or no, Claire said that about hospitals, and that's true. That's true. So I just want to say, like, that is very accurate. There's a lot of injuries, a lot of
Mhm.
intoxication, a lot of accidents around July
That
4th and
makes
St.
sense.
Patrick's Day. So I really appreciated that kernel of truth. And I also just wanted to say that I really did not like the OBGYN in this series, in this
That makes
episode.
sense.
I did not like his bedside
Yeah.
manner. I did not like him.
It was really quick that
Mhm.
what we
Quick,
saw, and I feel like that it
cold.
got back to the, dynamic of the show, but
Right.
you're right. I think it spoke to me feeling sorrow for Natalie's birth experience, and
Yes.
being then so glad that Pete was there. He ideally knows her birth plan, and then they can talk about it together, etc. But
Mhm.
it was dismissing and like quick and
Dismissive, cold,
mhm.
not like reading the room, not great bedside manner.
Yeah,
He also like, I think sometimes medical providers, Natalie was trying to ask him, like, what should I
right,
do? And a
right,
lot of times, you do want the patient to feel empowered to make their own decision. But like when they're really asking you, like, what do you recommend?
yeah.
Like you could give an answer. And I felt like he really was like, whatever you want to do, we'll
Right,
do.
because I was like,
And that
"Well,
was so
is it too
crazy.
early?" Like, and I was
Right.
thinking in my head, and I don't, I'm, the lay person here, but I'm like, is it too early? What happens if you get Pitocin? Like, is that,
Exactly.
does that harm the baby? Does that harm you? Is it like, and I was like, I
Like
have
all
no
these
idea.
questions. Right.
And he
Natalie, and
didn't
it's
tell
like,
her.
that's what I mean, is it was just like, "Well, whatever you want." And she's like, "I
Yeah.
don't know what I want.
Right.
That's what I'm asking you
Yeah.
for." But again, we
Good
see that she
catch.
doesn't like, Natalie doesn't, like, say that because
Mhm.
she's probably a people pleaser
Right.
and is already people pleasing her mom, and now she's gotta figure out this old white man doctor and, like,
Right.
really tough.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts about, these
Um,
characters?
I guess, it will kind of maybe circle a little bit of them in our part 2, but so many real life famous chefs were in this
Yes, that was so
season.
cool.
That was really cool. I learned that Thack, one of he's a
Mhm.
chef, right? And
Yeah,
this famous restaurateur in from
yeah,
Canada. I was like, I didn't know
and
that
he's an
until watching the
executive
season.
Maddie Matheson, he's like an executive
Yeah. I
producer,
loved
he's
it.
all over. I'm always commenting on his Instagrams like, "Please listen to our podcast, we
Yeah,
love
he
you,"
was great. Like,
He's
and just
so
his
funny.
character, I would love to play someone like him in TV.
Yeah,
Like, that's what if
the
I
comic
ever was
relief,
in yeah, just being like outrageous.
Billy.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I loved it.
Oh,
So
I love
kudos to
him.
them. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening to our coverage of The Bear season 3, part
Mhm.
1. Stay tuned for part 2 covering Carmi, Sydney, and Richie next Monday. and catch us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Analyze Scripts Podcast, and let us know what you thought about the show and our takes. We'd love to
Mhm.
hear. And
Yeah.
we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.